The last couple of years, we're hearing so much about agentic AI.
Agentic AI is a subset. The key things here compared to AI is that agentic AI is meant to do work for us, not just give us a step-by-step and then we go and do it ourselves.
Right.
An HR agent that we deploy. It's internal to IBM. Some 250,000 employees uses it daily. As a manager, IBM has reported in the last few years about $3.5 billion worth of gain in terms of productivity.
Hi, very good evening. Welcome. Today, I have the privilege of hosting Kitman Cheung, CTO, IBM ASEAN. And we're going to be talking a lot about agentic AI, quantum, open source, and, bunch of cool innovations, collaborations that IBM is sort of driving around the world and in the region. There's so much noise, so much literature around agentic AI and LLMs and quantum. I think what's critical to sort of do is to just understand, take a back step and understand, how are these technologies maturing? Are there overlaps? Are they sort of competing with each other, if at all? And most importantly, in the context of ASEAN, where are the use cases? Kitman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Prantik. Pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad we finally get the chance to do this. Kitman, before we sort of go geeky into all things AI, quantum, I know you love the subject. I want to understand a little bit more about your background. Just give us a sense of your early years, your childhood years. Were you always into tech? Your educational background would be wonderful for the audience to know.
Great. So thank you, Prantik. My name is Kitman Cheung. I am Hong Kong-born, Chinese-Canadian. So
global citizen.
So I moved to Canada at a relatively young age. Graduated university from University of Toronto. I studied electrical engineering as an undergraduate. And then I moved on to doing a master in industrial engineering, primarily focusing on human-computer interaction, how to build system for humans' use at that part of my career. So I was lucky enough when I graduated, I said, oh, geez, grad school money has ran out, research grant has ran out. So time to go find a job. And I was lucky enough to have gotten into IBM in IBM development lab in Toronto. I joined as a developer building wizard-based UI. A few years later, maybe I wasn't so good of a coder. So they said, hey, you know what? Why don't you go out into the open source community, be a developer at large, promote a little bit of the IBM technology out there. After that, I got into a bit of a role helping our business partner adopt our technology and eventually making my way out to APAC and started to do technical sales or pre-sales engineering. Right. And in that role, I started to interact a lot more with our end customers. And then over time, slowly getting into my current role, which is the CTO of IBM Technology ASEAN. My role is to still maybe do some of the pre-sales engineering work, but also doing a lot of work with client in terms of technology adoption. So that's where I'm at.
The world of technology has accelerated, it's pivoted, it's scaled up so quickly. Give us a lens of your IBM experience, as you saw the internet and mobile and, blockchain and now quantum and agentic AI. We'll talk about the technology aspect, but what was your experience and journey within IBM as you sort of saw these tectonic shifts in tech?
It's interesting because all the stuff that you mentioned perhaps is encapsulated in some way in the IBM career that I had. I think from the internet perspective, the increase in workload, the rapid jump in the data requirement, blockchain as well, slowly now moving into analytics and now subsequently into the AI space. I've seen a lot of innovation coming out of IBM research. I've seen a lot of those research becoming perhaps the industry leading ideas out there. Quantum will be one of the things that we'll be talking about here, but also perhaps some of the AI chips that we are currently working on that can actually help build more efficient AI inferencing and so forth. So all these works always keep me very excited throughout my career.
Beautiful. And, maybe give us a peek into the day in the life of a CTO, because there are many aspiring CTOs, people who might be listening who are probably progressing in their tech career. What's a typical week look like as a CTO of a large enterprise like IBM?
Sure. My role is perhaps a little bit different than a traditional CTO inside like an in-house organization.
Right.
But fundamental is the same. My job is to go out there, understand technology. Where's technology trends going, where we headed, how these technology trends going to impact the business, doing research, reading, of course, right? Making sure you're staying on top. One of the things that we really, really are pushing in the organization is that everyone in the organizations are hands-on, regardless if you're a CTO or if you're a developer on the ground. Everyone needs to get hands-on with technology because the credibility comes from that.
Of course.
My normal workload, other than some studying, emails, and all the other stuff, is interaction with clients, advising perhaps a peer CTO in these companies on what is coming or what we see is the key, but also listening, right? Incorporating their point of view so I can have a more well-rounded industry perspective. Because for me, I come from a technology company. I see tech through tech eyes. But when I interact with like CTO of financial institution or government or telco, they bring their unique perspective as well in terms of what technology means to their organization. We have our exchange, right? And I learn from that perspective each time. Probably spend at least half my time interacting with client from that perspective. So that's a little bit different than someone who's working for an organization as a CTO in-house. But I think some of the key activities would be the same.
I love the part about being hands-on and client interactions. Clearly, there's a lot about how do you stay on top, but also make sure that the clients are benefiting from all the good tech that you guys bring to the world. And that brings me to the question of the ethos of IBM. Every time I've read something about IBM or I've met people from IBM, two things sort of stand out. The emphasis on research and open source. Because in today's big tech world, there are walled gardens closed. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your clients?
I think the main thing that IBM research does is that it tries to really look at solving big problems for enterprises. The challenging problem is what they're really after. What IBM wants to be is creating benefit for society, making things run a little smoother, benefit a broader community.
Of course.
For example, things that we do around AI ethics and responsible AI, right? This is something that IBM is very passionate about. The responsible use of technology to create a better outcome is a very big part of what we do. We have a responsible technology office. There's a board that actually looks after how to use technology responsibly.
Right.
So something like that, for example, would be something that we'd absolutely think about creating open standard and creating open source project. So from that perspective, many of our AI governance capabilities, things that allows ethical, responsible AI is being open source. That's being shared with the community. And the idea is we want to share what we know, but is also to spark collaboration with the community because we don't know the answer to everything.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I can imagine, and I've read so much about the use cases, be it in financial services and government and sports, etc. And it's fascinating to take that mindset whilst running a company of that scale and that sort of revenue. Let's get to the weeds, right? Obviously, we are in the AI era. And I just want to demystify certain concepts around, we hear so many acronyms, right? But let's start with the basic question. If you were to explain what AI is to, a young graduate or someone maybe older who's never used AI, what's the simplest way that you would sort of unpack what AI is or the power of AI?
I think artificial intelligence is an application or a computer program or an algorithm that mimics human intelligence, right? So it encompasses a whole wide area of activities. You can, but today, most of it and the most popular or perhaps what made AI kind of the topic today, that it is today, is maybe the generative AI aspect.
That's right.
Right? And generative AI is a specific set of algorithm. So in this case, started out with a large language model that almost mimic human creativities in writing, in creating text, in writing stories, in composing email, a number of different things. So to some degree, there are areas of human intelligence where computing can surpass, and there are other areas that is catching up. Leverage the technology to help us assist a human being in doing the work that we need to do.
The last couple of years, we're hearing so much about agentic AI. If you could sort of help us describe, is agentic AI a subset of AI? How do you sort of describe agentic AI from an enterprise use case lens?
Sure. Definitely. Agentic AI is a subset. The key things here compared to maybe AI that's happened in the past, chatbot, for example, and so on, is that agentic AI is meant to do work for us, not necessarily just to maybe give us a step-by-step and then we go and do it ourselves,
Right.
but instead taking part or all of the tasks and completing it for us. So from that perspective, a AI agent exhibits some key characteristic.
Okay.
I think first of which are autonomy, right? It should be an autonomous process. It should have the ability to do part, if not all, of the work without human supervision or with minimal human supervision. I think second, I would say that it should be goal-oriented, that we give it a high-level goal, right? And that's where it is. It needs the ability to maybe sense the environment or to understand context of the task.
Yeah.
So I need, for example, accessing data, maybe getting a prompt, understanding the command itself, perhaps getting different data set or sensor information, so that you put context around the goal. Then from there, agents will take all that information as input, plan a course of action in terms of what are the step-by-step things that the agent needs to do. Then from there, execution. Doesn't count unless it can reach out and, in a way, touch the world. If it's not changing anything, then it's not actually getting work done. It's still just a plan. And then, of course, then there is the reflection and learning process, right? Adjusting its course of action. If one particular step of the plan fail or succeed, what is the next adjustment from there?
Yeah.
I think those are some of the key elements in terms of what an agent is supposed to be able to do. And if we go one step further now, I think we're moving into a space where the collaboration between human and then agent to agent itself, so multi-agent type workflow. But if I were to put it in a single sentence, is an AI where we have given it agency to perform tasks on our behalf.
And let's maybe deconstruct that and bring that to life in terms of some of the client work that IBM does, be it in financial services, logistics, any particular industry. Let's say financial services. If a client of IBM's wants to deploy agentic AI, what's the process? What are some questions to be asked? Typically, what sort of use cases are you seeing some of your clients deploy agentic use cases? Is it HR? Is it some of their operations work? Would just love to understand from a client lens, how are they looking at agentic AI and what use cases, and pick an industry, financial services or anything that's close to your heart.
I think from an agentic AI perspective, the deployment, at least in the ASEAN region, I would say that the internal work that you've described, the HR, the procurement, the finance workflow, applying AI techniques and capabilities into that space is where we're seeing a lot of actual interest.
Right.
Whereas going outside into the customer's side of the world, AI, I think, is still primarily used as more of a Q&A and kind of a chat type interface. Yeah. So HR definitely one of the hot topic. Finance procurements are also following suit as well. And the idea to be able to bring information from multiple sources together, summarizing, presenting perhaps a suggestion or recommendation, asking for permission to then complete tasks, that's quite often where we see a lot of traction. Most company wants to see the reasoning that the agent's doing. So actually the step-by-step thought process that is going through, but also to continue to have a human in the loop at this point in time. Right. To approve plans, to make sure that the plan itself is there. So we're still in a stage of trust building as well.
That's fascinating, because my next question was about, you can build the best tools, maybe the client side, the tech team procures it. How are you seeing clients sort of drive internal adoption? Is it more top-down, like a leadership diktat that everyone's got to be using it? Is there a lot of education that, let's say, you guys are working with your clients to sort of, because I can imagine, given productivity gains, perhaps a lot of employees could feel fearful that, is it going to take my job? Is it going to make my job difficult in certain cases? So talk us through adoption once, let's say, a client sort of procures a product or service. How are you seeing, or how does IBM help the broader organization of your clients adopt and use agentic AI?
Okay. I think there's quite a bit of top-down push
Right.
for somebody, at least investigation of the technology and starting to understand what it can do. Because I think, most C-suites has heard about agents and AI and so on, and has seen a glimpse of what it can be done, and are getting quite excited. Now, the key thing is, one, I think it's important in the adoption side to be able to demonstrate ROI, identify a business goal or a business outcome that you want, right? And using that as the baseline in terms of how to measure the outcome. The key here is we choose the right tools to solve the right problem. So first thing is define the problem. When you define the problem, you begin to look at, okay, today, how am I measuring this particular problem in terms of performance? What are my KPI today?
Yeah.
Right. How do I translate those KPI into tangible values in terms of dollar signs, perhaps?
Yeah.
Once you kind of understand that part, then you can look at, okay, now if I were to do an AI transformation, or if I were to inject the right technology into that particular workflow or that particular task or process, I can use those to measure return on investment again, and that's going to help me build the case to continue use. And that why is that important is because that starts driving adoption at the leadership level rather than just a top-down declaration. You start showing values to the various organizations that you work with. And as you get through that phase of driving ROI, you begin to then build that momentum within the organization.
Right.
At the same time, I think it's really important to build up more AI awareness in organizations beyond the technical team.
Right.
I think that's something that really will drive more transformative aspect of what AI can do for business. Because today, we're really looking at existing processes, but the real promise, I think, in a way, is to rethink and say, with AI, does that particular business process or that piece of work, should it still be done that way?
Right.
Or is it something entirely different? So, but to do that, I think it requires a complete change. I was recently listening to a fascinating podcast about AI adoption is now more, the barrier to AI adoption is probably more on a behavioral blocker than a technology blocker or knowledge blocker. It's the way people think about what AI can do for them.
Right.
So bringing up kind of the awareness and AI literacy, if you will, of the organization is going to help the organization transform. Bringing in leaders that understand the behavior of technology adoption, I think is also going to be really big.
Now this, I can sort of relate to this because I was talking to a fintech founder in Singapore, and he said, look, one of our biggest challenges is, he was quoting Jensen Huang, I think from the book NVIDIA Way, and he was saying, the point of education is so important and it needs to come from the top. Because one of the things I believe on the calls that Jensen does is just to share research input, share use cases. And also that sends a signal that if someone at the top is sort of permitting, if you will, or sort of encouraging you to rethink, how do you do things? Can I completely reshuffle or rewire the way my organization is structured? Can I do things in a different way? And on that note, you spoke about ROI metrics. Are you sort of seeing or helping your clients with when it comes to leveraging AI or agentic AI?
But I think it's important to think about this in terms of shifting workforce to doing other things.
Right.
Because this has happened throughout technology history. New technology comes along, we are going to gain in productivities. We will then find the next things to do, right? The ROI in terms of what processes are being replaced. We're certainly working with a lot of clients exploring, but I think I'd like to bring that back to maybe IBM's internal experience. The last 3 years or so, IBM has been adopting the technology that we build ourselves to transform the way we do work. A significant gain, for example, in multiple facets of HR support. In fact, today, the standard way of any IBM employees in doing anything HR is through an HR agent that we deploy. We call it AskHR. It's internal to IBM. some 250,000 employees uses it daily, if you will. As a manager, you can do different tasks. Everything from generating salary letter, requesting for times off, giving raises, performance review, everything can be done through a single agent. Other things that we're doing in the finance side in terms of processing order, cash collection, we've improved speed in those, giving quotes using AI to actually assist our sellers to give quotes to, to generate the necessary documents. We have an agent called Ask Sales. We have an agent called Ask HR. We have multiple agents at domain specific to assist us in that particular enterprise operation in that particular domain. What IBM has reported in the last few years, about $3.5 billion worth of gain in terms of productivity. Some of it cost saving, some of it may actually be other type of gain in terms of collecting cash faster, right? If we have a cash collection mechanism that actually enhance and speed up because of the use of agent, that actually translate to true tangible dollars.
Right.
So those are some of the work that we're doing. We're sharing these examples with our clients. We're quite open about it. How do we design it? How do we do it? We show them demonstration. And clients are coming along for the journey now. So we're seeing them look at that very seriously in terms of what to adopt next.
I'm sold at faster cash collection and quicker sales. Many of us in large enterprises, we sort of spend a lot of our time in mundane tasks. And I think if you can sort of make that efficient and effective, to your point, you can use a lot of the human brain power and the compute power for a lot higher value added tasks. Given all these amazing use cases, I want to touch upon something you said earlier about responsible and ethical AI. Let's maybe kickstart with what are some of the major risks of AI adoption that clients are thinking about, and what are some key tenets of responsible and ethical AI that sort of, when you all have conversation with the C-suite, you're trying to address those.
Yeah, AI adoption does expose a number of risks because you're using a piece of technology to perform tasks, and especially in time of generative AI era, and to some degree, agentic AI is based on generative AI perspective, right? Reasoning is a particular type of activities that an LLM can do, right?
Yeah.
But the part of the challenge there, of course, is by its very nature, the reason why it exhibits human-like reasoning power is because of the fact that it's probabilistic. If it's a deterministic task flow, if it's just from A to B, fixed point task, it would be an RPA. It would be a robotic process automation. It will not be an AI agent. Right? The variabilities is actually the power. The point is, things that you cannot do with traditional automation is where you bring in agentic AI, right? So, but as you bring that in, that probabilistic nature meant that there are areas where things can go wrong. So that introduces some level of risk. And in many ways, those risks can be mitigated with good governance technology, monitoring technology. So that is where we start looking at building in AI governance and AI monitoring and so on as part of our platform. But we also encourage, any organization adopting AI to think about governance and adopt and monitoring and so on at an early stage of adoption, because it's something that can catch up with us quite quickly. Now, from that perspective, many organizations and many government agency has come back with different types of perhaps pillars of trust or governance tenant, if you will. IBM has we have our own, and the major pillars are transparency, explainability, fairness, robustness, and privacy. Those are the key things that we think are important.
Right.
Now, with generative AI, is a little harder because the neural network, its very nature is harder to explain. But if you have good transparency and you have perhaps, depending on the task, you have good fine-tuning, well-documented prompt, you can, to some degree, control the explainability aspect. Of course, fairness is important. There's no inherent bias. Then, of course, you've got to get into robustness. You want to make sure that it's not going to fall over because of attack or anything along those lines. And then the last aspect that I mentioned was, of course, privacy, right? So one of the key things is how do you ensure that the data you give, the prompt that you give to the AI, isn't used for anything else other than what you wanted it to use for. Those are the key elements. And for an enterprise setting, I think those are good starting point on how to govern your AI use case.
Amongst those, the tenets that you spoke about, I think the one that sort of, I think gets a lot of attention, rightfully so, is about biases, right? So how do you sort of deal with, for example, a particular aspect around training? How do you help an enterprise train on data sets where the data set in itself is clean and not biased? Maybe just give us a sense of what are some of the ways to look at making sure, of course, there will always be biases, but what are some of the ways of mitigating that bias risk?
Yeah. So I think and again, in terms of training, you have classic machine learning, and then you have the generative AI aspect of it. I think the classic side is a bit better understood, right? You can actually look at the sample size and see if the data is actually representative in terms of outcome biases or data biases. It's a little harder when it comes to generative AI side. I think it's important to curate that data set when it comes to the LLM models training and so on, to ensure that the data in there is the data that you want. And that can be quite different depending on what is the purpose of the model that you're building for. But for an enterprise setting, we have a set of open source model we call Granite. And Granite models are designed in a way to ensure that the bias we give are free of some of these elements that can pollute the data itself. Yeah. And we do so because we believe that when it comes to an enterprise task setting, the language that we're going to use, the understanding of that language is going to be limited to the enterprise activities. And that actually allows us to streamline what we put into these models. So to use these as basis is going to give you a cleaner starting point.
Got it.
And then from moving from that starting point is about having the discipline in terms of curating data to enhance that model for enterprise needs, I think.
And I guess, like you mentioned earlier, there's always, or at least in today's world, there's always a human layer which is still there to sort of mitigate or check or validate or verify.
Yeah.
So you're letting the tech use its power and brain power to sort of compute and give you the answers, but there is still a human layer to sort of check before something goes out.
Right.
And let's sort of bring this AI, agentic AI, enterprise AI context to ASEAN, the region that you now operate in. Give us a sense of the maturity of AI adoption or any specific research work that you might be seeing around what is the state of AI in ASEAN?
In terms of AI adoption, where globally AI adoptions is at, many of, 80+% of the organization out there is still at that desktop productivity stage.
Right.
About 15% is at that extending existing process and integrating agentic AI capabilities into a broader task flow to integrate and to make things more seamless, faster, and more efficient. And only a few percent point is really redesigning things using AI.
Right.
So only a couple of percent from that perspective. Now, given that data and given maybe anecdotally what I have seen in the ASEAN region, the good news is I don't think ASEAN agent is far behind in terms of adoption and that particular type of profile. I think majority of the organization that I speak with are in the process of deploying some kind of desktop productivity tools. So a good chunk of the organization is doing that. Some of the more advanced folks are already into the extending capabilities and so on, and specifically maybe taking information that is enterprise only that they want to keep in-house and do not want to send on the internet. That's some of the key use cases where a bigger innovation's happening, a bigger investment's happening. But in terms of overall spectrum, I would not say ASEAN's far behind in terms of a global adoption setting.
That's definitely very encouraging for our viewers to know that we're not too far behind. But within ASEAN, ASEAN's obviously fragmented. You obviously have a developed nation like Singapore, but you have, 10 other nations. Are there like specific countries that you're seeing outside of Singapore where you're seeing the adoption to be like you're pretty happy and encouraged to see adoption in specific industries or specific ASEAN countries?
I do see like a lot of innovation in Singapore. Thailand has good experimental stages in terms of trying different technology as well. I do see quite a bit of that. But in general, I do see experimentation across the board. Like Malaysia are getting some interesting use cases, and some of the interesting use cases are actually outside of financial institution now. We're seeing adoption in the manufacturing sector.
Right.
There's a lot of need, for example, right now to look at planning in terms of financials and so on, doing what ifs, different types of scenarios, doing simulation around space that is, with the changing tariffs, what's going to happen, optimization. I'm talking AI in a broader term in terms of machine learning, optimization, technology. We're seeing more of that as well, where AI can come in and start rapidly respond to, for example, tariff change. What's that going to do to my supply chain? What's that going to do to my demand? Some of the things that are happening that economically is driving adoption of some of these technology in sectors that maybe you wouldn't think be as quick to adopt. It's driving some of that.
That's very powerful because, like you said, I think we're doing a pretty good job in ASEAN about the desktop use cases adoption. But I think when it comes to manufacturing and solving specific use cases around economic activity, around supply chain and trade tariffs, I think that's very, very encouraging to hear. Let's talk about quantum, because obviously IBM's spearheading and pioneering that particular field. Again, maybe let's start with the basics. What is quantum for you?
Quantum is a different kind of computing. Is entirely different kind of compute paradigm. I recently heard our own CEO describe what quantum is all about. Quantum fundamentally is a different way of doing. There's a different class of mathematics being done. So with that, you're going to solve a different class of problems. Whereas traditional classical computing that does Boolean algebra and that kind of things has its own set of algorithm and is good at solving a particular set of problems.
Right.
Quantum, on the other hand, is entirely different. The math behind it, the type of problem it can solve, it's not the same as classical computing. There are overlaps, right? There are areas where both of them can be used to solve problems, but there are areas where entirely new problems are going to be solved.
Like what can quantum do that, let's say, traditional or typical AI can't?
Yeah, so there's one of the probably biggest one in terms of classical computing versus quantum. It's probably around material science in molecular simulation, like to be able to simulate what's happening at the molecular level to a molecule, to the atom, energy state of the electrons. To simulate that level is a computational problem that classical computing cannot solve.
Right.
Quantum can help us invent new molecules, new drugs, new chemicals, right? Quantum can help us with optimization around logistics, right? There are a few areas where we see tremendous potential. Portfolio optimization, right? That's something that's very big. So we have recent success with some of our quantum network members in the financial space that actually was able to predict bond prices significantly, like 34% more accurate than classical in a limited problem space, but in that space, it was able to demonstrate that 34% improvement in terms of accuracy of bond price prediction. In a space where 1% to 2% is significant, 34% is a giant leap forward. So very excited about where quantum is going. And
I think the word I'll take back is giant leap forward. Clearly, what it sounds like is as quantum or the adoption of quantum progresses, it can solve moonshot problems, because if you're saying 34%, that's a giant leap. Mm-hmm. Anyone who has access to that sort of power can use it for pretty significant jumps in revenue or profits. What sort of adoption, where are we when it comes to quantum? Is it still a very research level maturity, or are you seeing industrial client adoption?
We definitely have a number of financial institutions in the region that are quantum network members.
All right.
So there's definitely financial industry experimenting in the space with our quantum technology. In terms of locally in ASEAN, recently IBM and National University of Singapore has joined forces in a way. Yeah. We've announced the formation of the IBM NUS Research and Innovation Center.
Right.
that is there established in Singapore to focus on two things: driving AI technology adoption and quantum technology adoption. We invite industry, academia, and various participants in to leverage IBM technology and US research know-how, IBM research know-how to solve problems with AI technology and with quantum. I think just a few, maybe not that long ago, maybe a few months back, Chiang Mai University in Thailand has announced the intention to join the quantum network, IBM quantum network, as well as the IBM and US joint initiative to become a research partners in that space. So I'm quite excited to see Thailand jumping in. We're starting to see some of these leading research take place here locally to maybe solve some interesting problem here.
As an NUS alum, I'm very proud and excited because I think it also speaks a lot about IBM's philosophy. You started speaking about collaboration, right? And I'm presuming all of this would be under the open source sort of model. Is that how you're looking at it?
Yeah. So again, many of our things are open source. Our quantum information science toolkits, which is an open source toolkit to build quantum circuitry, to basically test algorithm and things on our quantum computing network. That toolkit is open source.
Got it.
If you are part of the quantum network members, effectively what that means is you have access to the largest fleet of quantum computing infrastructure in the world at the moment. So where these are real quantum computers that you can use to start with experimentation of quantum algorithm and so on. I mean, I mentioned before that our chairman said that this is a new type, it's a computer that does different types of math, right? And that type of math means new type of algorithm. These algorithm needs to be invented. And reason why we think, again, let's build around open source toolkits, because this open source toolkits allow others to come in and start experimenting with their algorithm. And we're going to have a quantum computers that can be sent out to solve real life practical problem, not just research. So in 3 to 4 years, we will be at a time where IBM will be releasing that's our roadmap. Our current target is to release a fault tolerant quantum computer by 2029. So it's moving fast, right? So we have this toolkit, we bring people together to innovate, to collaborate. Those software hopefully will be the foundation work for those real practical use cases that we will hope to be able to solve, where we can use it to solve practical problem in a cost-effective way.
Exciting for the next batch of students who come to NUS and any of these universities to sort of get a chance to tinker around, play with quantum, because as you said, I think the roadmap is fairly clear that as you all build the infra to the R&D there, organizations, enterprises, universities can sort of experiment and do R&D at the application layer. If today there's a middle management or a senior management leader who's sort of just seeing these tech waves, from your experience, maybe just give us a sense of how do leaders today keep up with this pace of change? What are some of your tips and tricks that have sort of allowed you to sort of progress so well in your organization?
One big things I think that almost sounding repetitive or cliche to everybody else is this whole notion of microlearning. Right. I mean, I do think of learning in small chunks now. My own team asked me, can we have small bite-sized, consumable learning that we can take on, on a regular basis that we can actually absorb? So something that takes, 15, 20 minutes to do, watch a podcast, watch something small, speaking to others and exchanging idea, but reading occasional books here and there. Sign up for something that maybe put you a little bit on the spot where you have to create an artificial deadline to do the learning yourself. That's for me has worked very well. So that's some of the things that I would do on a regular basis, I'd say.
Thanks for sharing. We've nearly come to the end of the hour, and I've just learned so much about not just your journey, but also the way IBM continues to sort of power innovation. A couple of 2-3 quick rapid fire questions just to sort of, end on a note where we sort of understand you a little better. What's your biggest source of motivation or inspiration? Is there one person, one book that motivates you the most?
It's not a book or anything along those lines. I am very interested on things that are the latest research that's ongoing and seeing how that evolves into a solution that can solve real life problems. So in terms of what's keeping me interested and wanting to keep learning is seeing those things come to life.
And when you look ahead, is there one piece of tech that you're sort of really curious to see how it pans out and you're excited to sort of bring that to life in ASEAN?
I think in the nearer term, one of the things that exciting is to see how some of these algorithms that we're seeing in terms of transformer, in terms of things that created the LLMs, looking at what the impact of that in different types of data would be. Right, this is something that I've seen in IBM research. Even going back a few years, where instead of generating language, can we generate molecules? Can we generate weather pattern? I think that in the short term is fascinating. In the long term, taking a look at what quantum will do for us. Financial portfolio optimization, that's already there, but anti-fraud is another one. Yeah. Material science is another one. And then also watching for, what is going to do to the world, to cryptography, right? To secure, to cybersecurity and so on. These are all things that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Thank you so much, Kitman, for being on the show. Really appreciate you sort of, breaking myths, breaking down, deconstructing what Agentic AI quantum is at an enterprise level, what the roadmap looks like, and most importantly, contextualizing it for the audience in ASEAN.
Thank you, Prantik. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully you enjoyed the show. I learned quite a few things. The 3 key learnings, I think, if I distill this, is I'm actually quite encouraged about the fact that we in ASEAN are not left behind when it comes to manufacturing, molecular science, financial services. The second thing was that this whole element of the maturity curve. We've seen different waves, RPA, AI, Agentic AI, quantum. And it's amazing to see how IBM has always had one step forward, be it in terms of research and development, making sure that it's open source and the collaborative nature to make sure that the technology is accessible to people to solve real business problems, real societal problems, if you will. I think he spoke beautifully about the fact that with any tech evolution, you've got to find better usage of human brain power and human time. One can't sort of operate from a lens of fear. It's about if a device or agentic AI can solve something better, what can we humans do to sort of keep up and learn? And I think his suggestions on keeping up, using micro-learning and sort of creating artificial deadlines is probably the biggest takeaway for me. Is as business leaders, as employees, as students, I think the goal is how do we evolve? How do we stay relevant and current? And I think the onus is on us. So hopefully this was useful. Please do sort of share your questions in the comments box, and we'll be happy to sort of address some of those questions. Thank you for watching.
This video is brought to you in partnership with IBM.